Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquatazoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about planning ahead. I'm coming at you as an aquarium professional who's been in the business for over 2 decades at this point. Because at one point I realized that aquarist work I already knew that aquarist work was very physical. But I realized that I was not going to be able to do it forever. Fortunately, I realized that pretty early, but this is what I'm talking about. Zoo, aquarium, animal care, keeper type work is kind of brutal on the body. And so I want to talk about how we plan ahead for the future, even though we don't really want to think about a time when we won't be able to work directly with the animals. That is not to say that somebody can't dream or want or accomplish being a zookeeper or an aquarist for their entire career. That's absolutely possible. It depends on your situation and your workplace, I guess, and the type of work that you're doing, the levels of seniority, I suppose, and that sort of thing, and what you want to do, right? This is a choice thing. And so I realized relatively early on that I was not going to be able to do this type of work forever just because it's really hard on your body. The knees, the back, there's certain repetitiveness to it, and the fact that we just get tired, we pull muscles, it hurts. Wrestling animals can get really tiring sometimes. Scuba diving can get tiring. All of that kind of stuff. It's a very physical job, and while it's rewarding and it's fun and it's interesting, you will always win the battle of who's got the coolest job. Even though all of that is true, there's always a possibility that an injury could land you in a position where you can't necessarily do your job that well anymore or completely. And there's always a possibility that you just get tired. In those cases, it's great to plan ahead. I'm not going to say that you have to do it the way I have done it because my way works for me. It may not work that way for everyone, right? I realized probably 10 to 15 years in that I was probably not going to be able to do this forever, and therefore I needed to have a plan for my future. And that included not necessarily being the one handling the animals every day. Honestly, one of my biggest fears was getting an injury that rendered me incapable of doing my job. And that is because if you can't do it, you're more prone to being let go, right? And not basically I was afraid of not being able to make the right call on my own terms. So, before I ever had an injury like that, because I did see it happen to people around me, and it's terrifying, right? Not necessarily that anybody lost their life around me, but like I saw a lot of severe knee injuries and back problems that blossomed into people being unable to execute part of their jobs, right? And so before that happened, I was like, no, 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 no. If that is ever on the horizon for me, then I need to have a plan B. And so then I started looking into what other options do I have. I will tell you that a majority of animal care folks tend to move on, right? They actually leave the field and go do something completely different. I've seen lots of people that I used to work with go on and become real estate agents or work in car dealerships or go on to be CEOs of companies. Like they do wonderful, great things, but it's not animal care. It's not the thing that they loved, when they're in their 20s. And so a lot of people elect to leave the field entirely and go do something completely different. That's great. That's fine. If that's what your plan is, wonderful. When I was thinking about it, I was thinking, no, I don't want to do that. I really enjoy what I do. Plus, I enjoy the organizations that I work for, right? No matter what type they are, like whether it's for profit or nonprofit or state or city or private company, I enjoy the workplace of an aquarium personally. And so I was thinking to myself that I wanted to stay in the aquarium business, maybe a zoo business too, like, zoo aquarium, something, maybe museum, in that realm where I get to work with organizations that are educating the public about what's going on in the oceans or with animals in their natural habitat and things like that. That is what I wanted to do because I loved it so much. Working in animal care, though, there's always this risk of injury or problems or getting sick to the point that I can't do my job fully. When you're an aquarist, there's always a possibility that you won't be able to dive for some reason, whether that's temporary or permanent. Risking your ability to dive is always a possibility as well. And so I've seen that happen too, where somebody couldn't dive anymore, therefore they couldn't fulfill their duties as their position and had to find something else and had to figure something else out. I didn't want to be forced to make a decision about what to do in the heat of the moment, right? If an injury happened or an illness happened that rendered me unable to do part of my job, if not my entire job, I didn't want to be stuck. But I wanted to stay in the same field, so I had to figure out what I was going to do. So I looked at the other folks that were working with me, what other jobs were there in my institution that I could do? And I honed in on the animal care leadership, right? They're still involved, but they don't necessarily have to put in the back-breaking work every day. On occasion, yes, that does happen, but not all the time, right? You have a little bit of time to recover in between, And if I sustained an injury, it wouldn't be a huge hamper to the team if I took my time to recover physically before getting back involved again, right? Like the missing of the leadership position in the very physical work is not as detrimental as the keepers and the aquarists themselves and the team that they represent, like losing a whole person. You know what I mean? My involvement in the physical part of it, if I were a leader in the animal care group, would not be as impactful and it would be just less physically. So that's kind of where I was looking. And I'll be honest with you, when I was looking at the leadership that I was working for, essentially, I kind of looked at them and was like, okay, what would I need to get to where they are, and or how could I be better at it than they are? Which is, I guess, a little bit of a competitive way to look at it, but I wanted to do what they do, but do it better. I don't feel like that's that weird, right? I don't know. But what I kind of came up with and came to realize was that animal care leaders, at least at the time, it's changing at this point, but animal care leaders at the time were animal care people that just moved up through the organization, right? And so I realized what I could do better was to have the leadership skill on top of the animal knowledge and experience, and then I would be better. Which is, admittedly, a goofy way to look at this, but I can't help it, right? I wanted to do what they did, but do it better and be more helpful, I guess, to my team, right? So that's what I realized, was that I needed to have the leadership skill to build on with the animal care skill and knowledge and experience. And so that's when I started my master's degree. I've moved on to the doctorate now, but that has helped me immensely, right? The people skill that I did not realize I was missing at the time, it's opened my eyes, right? I could not fathom how much people skill I needed and how much people skill I could naturally tap into until I started broadening my horizons and really concentrating not on the animal stuff so much as the people skills. You can apply animal care skills to people skills because those skills of observation, let me tell you, are pivotal in leadership. So the fact that I was an animal care person and I could kind of read body language and tone and things, because that's what we do with animals. And that's how we tell how they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're going to do next. You can do that with people. It's kind of incredible. So I was able to apply some of my animal care knowledge to the leadership skills because they're very similar, even though you probably wouldn't realize it until you start studying them both, right? So I really put a lot of emphasis into learning the leadership skill. A, I knew it was one of my weaknesses. B, I mean, people had been telling me that. I wanted to ignore them for a very long time, but then I started to realize, like, if I can't do this job physically, I have to figure out what else I can do. I didn't want to leave the field entirely, so I had to get better, right? And so that's what led me to the leadership stuff, the people skills stuff, was that I wanted to be able to move up and to legitimately make an argument for why I should. And so that involves getting a little bit more education, experience, knowledge on people skills, because at the time that I was thinking about all this stuff, I was working with animal care leaders who were not skilled at that kind of thing. Not to their detriment necessarily. They were not given those tools and reinforced for learning those things and employing people skills. Like, at the time, it was kind of the wild, wild west. It was, you work for X amount of time as an animal care person, you're going to naturally move up the chain of command until you're leading the animal care team. Should that work that way? No, it should not. Because when you're talking about leading a team, that's an entirely different skill set than leading or than managing the animals themselves. You need to have some serious people skills, some communication skills, some ability to kind of collaborate and mediate discussions, and like all of these other little things that people, at least at the time, used to kind of write off as like soft skills. That's not a term I like to use. It's people skill and the ability to lead, right? Those were the ones that I needed because I was gravely terrible at them when I was a young aquarist. And the leadership that I had, they were not providing a very good example of what to do. And because they didn't have those skills either. And it's not their fault. It's just because that's how the industry worked at the time. It's getting better now. There are more people like me out there who are like, wait a minute. We can't be leading a team of people out here with no people skills. So it is getting better. And also, if you are looking at the situation, planning your career, you're going to need to know that as well, right? So an animal care person is less likely to succeed as an animal care leader if they don't put some effort into those people skills. You can have some of those naturally. I did not. So lucky you if you have some people skills naturally, some charisma, some, skill in getting people to do what they need to do, right? And bringing out the best in everyone around you. Bravo to you if you naturally have that skill. I did not. And even now, I still sometimes struggle with it. But you are not going to be able to be an animal care leader without those skills at this point. The industry has smartened up a little bit. Many of us have been kind of tortured by some of these folks who become animal care leaders without the leadership skill. So it becomes less and less likely that institutions are going to be hiring animal care people without some leadership skill of some kind, whether you naturally have it or whether you learn it over many years and lots of practice and, degrees and education, right? And I'm not saying that you have to go back to school to learn that stuff. It worked best for me, but I like school, and I know that's not for everyone. You can read books, you can watch videos, you can go to the library, you can ask people to help you out, you can go get coaching, there's many different avenues through which you can learn some of these skills. You can listen to a podcast, right? It doesn't depend on school. It doesn't depend on money. You can learn some of these skills if your mind is open to it and you have some initiative to get some of those skills under your belt. So that's my warning for people who are planning. If you work in animal care or you want to work in animal care, that's all great. Or any technical field, honestly. If you plan to work there and just do that work, that's fantastic. It can be a full career if you really want it to be. But just know that there are things that happen, especially when you're working in animal care. It's kind of a dangerous, hard physical job. It's not for everyone to want to do until they retire. You know what I mean? And I have worked with caretakers who are in their 50s, 60s and could possibly retire from it. And some of them do want that and they do accomplish it. More power to you, because I was not prepared to do that physical work until the end of time, right? I knew my body was telling me that I was one severe injury away from not being able to do it anymore. So I headed off before I got to that point and started learning early, because I wanted to be in animal care leadership. That's where I am now, and that's where I hope to continue to be. But, I'm learning more and picking up more skills and picking up more knowledge and getting some more credentials and experience where I can. I can kind of qualify as a teacher at this point too, because I teach other aquarium zoo professionals how some of this stuff is done, not all topics, but some topics. But that can all lead to my future, whatever that might look like. I'm not ready to retire by any means. I got a solid several decades to go, but what my career looks like has more possibility because I have broadened my skill set. So I could stay with animal care teams and go on to be, director, VP, whatever of an institution, or I could go into academia and start teaching there because I'm on the verge of a doctorate degree. And so I could do that. I could go and consulting, right? Consulting other animal care teams in other institutions, working for a firm that does that specifically. I could do that. There's lots of different avenues at my disposal because I decided early on that I wanted to broaden my skill set and open up as many opportunities as I possibly could so that in the future, if I did get injured, if I did have something happen that really changed my life for whatever reason, that I had something to fall back on that wasn't this very narrow skill set of animal care. Now, granted, there's lots of jobs in animal care, and I could fall back on my bachelor degree as well and go into like a biologist kind of role with the state or whatever. That's also a pretty physical one, though. And I just know that my body won't be able to hold up to all that, and it's just because I know me. And so if you are super physically fit and you know that your body can handle it, by all means, please go be animal care, a biologist, whatever, any kind of physical job, and enjoy it for all that it's worth, right? You can do it. You're doing great. But if you know on the horizon that something's going to change eventually, you just don't know when, prepare for it. Think about it. It stinks to think about because I loved aquarists so much. Like, I love the work, loved working with the animals directly every day. It was therapeutic to like get in there and scrub a tank down really good. It's nice to be able to walk out and chat with a visitor about the animals, their behavior, what they're seeing, and educate them on what's going on. Like, I love that. That's great. But I knew that I would be doing my team a disservice if something happened to me or something happened in general that rendered me unable to do parts of my job for long periods of time. And so if I got a knee injury, if I got a back injury, if something happened and I couldn't dive or something like that, like all of this stuff matters and is part of the animal care situation. It's very hard on your body. And if you feel like you want to do it for now, but it may not be a forever situation, then be realistic about that. Think about it and think about what you may want to do in the future. People sometimes ask me how I ended up with this weird collection of degrees and education and, I guess, talent. Because it seems disjointed. Because I have a bachelor's degree in marine biology, I have a master's degree in zoo and aquarium leadership, and then now I'm working on a doctorate of education in leadership. So that seems really weird. Like, everybody, when I say that I'm in a doctoral program, they're like, oh, you're getting a PhD in marine biology. Sure, I would love that. But it's not what I think will serve me best into what I want for my future, which is less about the animals and more about the people who work with the animals, I suppose. That's where I envision my career turning. And it kind of naturally did that, right? So, I mean, even way back when I was trying to figure out how I could get into animal programs for AZA. So these are the programs where like populations of animals are managed in the US. So we all know where this species is held in the US AZA institutions and who can move animals to breed and come up with the most viable genetic distribution so that, we don't have animals that are inbred, right? So in these animal programs, there's all kinds of different animals, there's all kinds of populations, and I really wanted at one point to be involved with that. And I was hitting a lot of walls with trying to get involved because of extenuating circumstances. I won't get into it right now. But I naturally kind of was like, how do I get involved? And so I was like, oh, they have this, instructor position open, and I would like to pay back some of the people that have taught me along these years and, pay it forward, I guess. And so I applied to be an instructor for a course for one of AZA's professional development courses, and I got in. They just happened to be looking for an aquarium person who had experience with fish and reptiles and things. And hey, that's me. So I managed to get in. And then from there, it ended up being more of a leadership type class than it was like an animal care type class. It has elements of all the things, right? But really, it was heavy in the leadership stuff. So like naturally, as my brain was kind of pivoting at that point, because I was struggling with animal care for a little bit, I was struggling with the leaders for animal care for a little bit, and just the circumstances led to more leadership skill, more leadership talking and discussion of these topics that I wasn't super into at the time, but I still found really interesting, right? I love animal behavior and training and enrichment. And so it kind of naturally morphed into people behavior and how do we get people to enjoy their jobs? How do we get them to, have fun and love what they do no matter what it is that they do? They could be scoop and poop and still enjoy it, right? Like that was really interesting to me. And so it kind of naturally moved. As I thought about it, I was like, oh, these leadership topics are actually really important. And it's really just animal behavior, but pivoted towards people, right? And so it's just like a natural progression that was all happening at the same time in my workplace and with my like volunteer work with the instructor job that I had suddenly gotten. And then, into school and stuff like that. Like all of it kind of naturally moved. So it might seem really unrelated and disjointed to people who are looking at it, but if they had kind of been on this journey with me, they would understand how it got to be where it is now. Why I'm trying to get a doctorate in leadership when I started off in marine biology, right? It's just because what I was experiencing and what I envisioned for my future started to naturally change. And fortunately, I did think about it when I realized that I was not going to be able to retire from this particular job of, very physical work, tiring work. You're working with people who are primarily in their 20s. I knew I was not going to be able to keep that up forever. And so I was like, what do I do? What could I do? What pivots could I make to still make a career out of this field, but not necessarily this job? And so that's how I got to be where I am now. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit, not to just talk about me and how great I am, because if that is not the case. But I just want people to really think ahead, because I noticed that through my time in aquarium business that the people that leave the field, even though they really love the job, had not really thought about what their future would look like beyond animal care. We had some people that left to become parents and raise a family. That's totally understandable. And I'm not saying anything against the people that left the field entirely, but a lot of people tended to feel like they didn't have anything to offer. And another issue is that it doesn't pay well. So I understand why people felt they needed to leave, because sometimes they didn't have a choice. As much as they loved the work, a lot of times it doesn't pay quite enough based on how much knowledge, education, certification stuff you need to have to maintain these jobs. It doesn't usually pay enough to warrant that. And so their time and effort was really spent better somewhere else where they could make more money. And they might not love the job as much, but it worked out better for their overall life. I can't fault people for that. And I totally understand, right? So think about that. Make sure you understand what your job is. And if you love it, that's great. What you're aiming for in the future, like what do you envision for your life? And so for me, as much as I would love to lead animal care teams for the rest of my career, that may not be in the cards for me, and I need to be open to that. In which case, I also enjoy educating people about the business, right? That's why I have this podcast that's had like 200 some odd episodes, right? is because I just enjoy the field. I like letting people see behind the curtain. I like to educate folks about how all of this works and what makes it function, and thus it is possible that I pivot to education, right? Not necessarily education programs in a zoo or aquarium, that's not really my forte, but educating people about zoo and aquarium work, like how these institutions function. I could do the consulting, I could do zoology courses, right? Like this is the kind of thing that I could pivot to next so that I can help raise the next generation of keepers and aquarists. I would love that. I'm still involved and still making an impact on young zookeepers and aquarists who I adore. And so that's another option. I'm just saying, keep an eye out for the things that interest you. Be aware of what you're paying attention to and what piques your interest. Behavior has always gotten me. Learning always gets me. So combining those things, whether it's learning and dealing with animals or learning and dealing with people, I love that. So I feel like as long as my job entails some of that stuff, I will be happy. I will feel fulfilled because what really gets me jazzed every day is behavior and animals and people who care about animals. And so as long as I can kind of surround myself with people like that somehow, I'll be happy. And putting myself in the best position to qualify for those types of jobs is the best thing I can do to maintain my happiness with my career path. Even though it seems weird, the path that I've taken educationally, I think in the end it has continued to benefit me in the jobs that I've had in the institutions that I've worked for. Sometimes it's been a struggle because I've almost learned too much. Those positions where I have had, lots of education about how leadership should work and then viewing how leadership should not work in my workplace has been detrimental. Like it's not been helpful and it's caused more problems for me than I would like to admit. But still being interested in that and still not giving in to poor leadership is a little badge of honor that I have, right? So I just mention it and use myself as an example because I want everybody to be aware that animal care work is hard and, technical work can be hard on your body and hard on your mind, and just be aware of things that you're paying attention to without even realizing it. And it took me a little while to figure out that it was the behavior stuff that I really got into because I was so focused on the technical work of learning how to take care of animals that I didn't realize that it was the behavior that was really getting me and that I really enjoyed. And so that pivoted from animals to people. And it happened naturally. It happened gradually. And so I just want people to pay attention to the things that really interest them so that you can get an idea of how you might incorporate that into your everyday work so that you feel really fulfilled in what you're doing, whatever it is. Like if you get really jazzed about numbers and you're an accountant, by all means, enjoy the heck out of that. It's not for me because I'm not really great at that kind of stuff, but everybody's got their own little thing that they love. And I just want people to be aware about that and kind of use that as a guide to show you where you may want to be in the future. Do a little research, look something up, ask some folks what they did to get to where they are, right? Especially if you have a job in mind that you think is your dream job, ask that person how they got there. They will be happy to tell you what they would and would not change about their career path and their education and all that stuff. So think about the future. You never know where it could lead you. Okay. If you have any questions about that or any other zoo and aquarium things or leadership and management stuff, let me know. You can write it in an email and send it to me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget you can follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you would like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you're looking to take a vacation and you do not know where to start, I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you out. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay, Thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.